So we've got here a laptop, Dell Latitude 7370, and the owner says basically turns on, nothing happens on the screen, charges the battery and turns on, but nothing on the screen or on the external display. It has been opened by another technician before, and they assume that some sort of damage on the motherboard, like a capacitor or something. I am not sure, I haven't had a look at it yet. I'm going to take a look and see if we can find the fault. So let's start disassembling the laptop and see what's happened inside. And I really don't like working with laptops that are already being worked on by other technicians, because there may be modifications done which may have worsened the condition or will affect the repair process. So here I've got the cover out, and upon initial inspection I can see some of the screws were really, they tried to open it with the wrong screwdriver. The plates are coming off a little bit, cables are all over the place. So it's going to be a tricky one and maybe a long one. Let's see how this goes. So first thing I decided to do was remove the motherboard from its base and see if I can see any physical damages, like a burn or something similar, or have a look at it under the infrared camera, see if any component is heating up, just to do a general check. My removal was easy because it was already opened by somebody else, and upon initial inspection I didn't see any liquid damage or any physical damage, so I'm assuming this may not be a physical fault. So let's have a look deeper. The metal plates actually cover very important components underneath. The one on the right has the thermal paste stuck to it, so you need to apply a little bit of pressure to remove it. Now my camera became faulty again, but what I did later on was check the motherboard on the thermal camera. Nothing did get heat up, and played around with some voltage checks around the board, and nothing was unusual. This told me the problem is actually maybe the BIOS chip itself. I decided to work on the BIOS chip first, and hopefully that was the issue, which is a lot of work, but it can be done. I use a Raspberry Pi for my BIOS chip programming, and here is me trying to connect the Raspberry Pi with the 8-pin connector to the wrong chip. The BIOS chip on this motherboard is actually a 16 megabyte chip, and I was actually trying to connected to the 4 megabyte WinBond chip, which was the incorrect chip. And with my first go I did manage to identify the chip and started dumping the old data across, which was incredibly good feeling, but I knew something wasn't right because everything works smoothly without any problems. Usually to me it means I'm doing something wrong. Now I got the pins connected properly, and let's have a look in the Raspberry Pi terminal, see if the chip gets detected. We can see here the chip did get recognized, which was the first command on the top. Now I'm going to attempt to flash a BIOS dump I got from elsewhere, which is a 16 megabyte file, and like an idiot I'm attempting to write it onto this 4 megabyte chip. Of course I'm going to get an error. Here now I'm dumping the contents of the chip to a file, just in case. And this is the bit where I'm trying to write that 16 megabyte file onto the 4 megabyte chip. That's the error there. After trying countless times, I tried to get the 8 pins to pin onto the right chip, but it just wouldn't work. The pins do not make contact. I tried tried many times, adjusting left way, right way, pressing down, holding pressure. I just could not detect the chip. So the only way was either run jumper wires from those pins or remove the chip from the board and then put it into a reader and then desolder it and then put it back onto the board. And I tried to do the second option. So here you can see me trying the second option. So I took the motherboard out of the system again and the battery, and I attempted to remove the chip from the board. To remove the old chip easily without putting a lot of damage, I put a bit of flux and solder and then use the heat gun to remove the chip from the board, hopefully not applying a lot of heat. I haven't got a low melt solder, I'm using just a standard solder here. A low melt solder will actually allow me to use low heat to remove it. Here under the microscope you can see the WinBond chip, and I'm going to now mount it onto this daughter board, which will allow me to connect the jumper leads from the Raspberry Pi to read and dump the data from this chip. The middle part of this chip was actually quite big, and so I was worried that the reader will touch the middle pin plus one of the sides of the pins. So I put a little Captain tape in the middle, but it just didn't work, so I had to take it out and just take a gamble and give it a go. I had a look under the microscope about my job quality, see if I needed to apply a little bit more solder to make sure those connections were making contact. I did put more flux and a little bit more solder on both sides, ensuring that there was a contact being made by all 8 pins. It's very crucial, otherwise all this work goes to waste. And I think this one did look better. It's only a temporary job, and as long as it made connections, I was happy. I looked up the datasheet for this chip so I can map the pin configuration correctly with the Raspberry Pi. So here you can see which chip it is. And here is the pin layout. So I'm going to attempt to connect my Raspberry Pi accordingly. So I've started connecting every pin accordingly, removing from the old 8-pin connector straight onto the new chip connector. Our Raspberry Pi is set to go, and let's plug in the HDMI and all the other cables and let's see what happens. I could not believe my luck when it detected the chip on the first go. It was such a good feeling. So it started to take a dump of the current chip, and then later on I'll flash it with the new dump file. And this command did run successfully. I did manage to take a dump, and now I'm going to flash it with the new data. Here we go, now we are writing the new data. Let's see how it goes. Here it is, we're done. Now the job is to put it back on the board, and let's see if the system will boot. So here I am removing the BIOS chip from the daughter board. There it is. And now let's go and put it onto our motherboard. Let's prepare the motherboard, put a lot of flux and solder, and then we will use hot air gun to put the new BIOS chip back. Here we go, we're gonna start now heating the board and put this chip back in place, and let's see if the system will detect it. Just to be safe, I'll put more flux and more solder on both sides, ensuring that it does get detected and the joints actually make good connection. So here I've decided to put it back in the system, and with the minimal connections connected, see if the system will boot. Now here is me trying to boot the system, and unfortunately it did not work. And what will happen is it's a different behavior. It will turn on for a few seconds and then turn off. Unlike before where it used to turn on and stay on. This time it won't even stay on, it actually turns off after a few seconds. Very annoying. I felt like all those efforts were for nothing. So I decided to go back and double check my connections and apply a bit more flux and solder and see if I have any luck. Here comes more flux and more solder, and let's give it another go after this. Now the behavior is different this time. It will turn on, stay on for some time, and then turn off. It's kind of like a behavior of a motherboard where the battery is taken out for a while and it takes a while to boot. So I decided to just wait and see what happens. Because it was turning off and turning on by itself, it told me that the board is doing something, so I decided to wait longer. Voila! And then it turned on. What a great feeling this was. The motherboard definitely had a BIOS chip problem. So this is all it for this video, and I've actually gone in later on into putting it all back together, putting in a 128 gig M.2 2280 SSD and put Windows 10 Professional and put this laptop for sale. The link is on the bottom of this video if you want to buy it. It's only for Australia, of course. But I think this is a success, and I don't know if there is any other problems with the laptop yet. So once I put it all back together, if everything works out well, it will be sold with warranty. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you learned something. So I put everything back together now and turn it back on, put the cover back on, and I put Windows 10 bootable USB, and away we go. I am enjoying a sushi here while getting this system up and running. It has a 8GB RAM. I'll put a 128GB SSD in there. It's the 6th generation M5 CPU, and this motherboard doesn't have any fan if you noticed. Now, one thing did happen with a BIOS dump is the Windows 10 serial number in the original BIOS is now disappeared. So, which is not really a problem. I'm going to open the Windows. I'm going to go find that serial number in a hex editor from that dump, the BIOS file, and then use that to activate this Windows 10 Professional. Again, thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to support this channel.